Hey, welcome to Classic Performance. We're back out at the American Dream SkyRanch with Thom Richard and the FM-2 Wildcat. You're not going to believe this. Tom's going to tell us a little bit about the Wildcat in general and this particular Wildcat and what makes it special. So let's get right to it and let Tom tell us about the FM-2 Wildcat.
Well, welcome back to the SkyRanch. Today we're going to talk about the Grumman design, the Wildcat. This particular example was not built by Grumman. This is an FM-2. So the F4F-3 and 4 were built by Grumman, and then when the Hellcat production started, the Eastern Aircraft Company, who was a division of the General Motors, little-known automotive company at the time, started building the Wildcat on license. The difference was that the FM-2 was equipped with a more powerful Wright R-1820-56 versus the Wildcat's 1830 with its famous supercharging system. So we're going to do a walk around on the Wildcat today, and right here at the front, you notice right away, this is not a hydraulic propeller. We got a Curtiss electric, rather unusual prop anymore these days. But they do work very well, and it's really handy design. Either prop would work on this engine. That was an interchangeable component at the time. So the way this works, it's got a giant electric motor in the front, and that's how you change the pitch in the cockpit with a switch. Also has a governor to control it if you want to have it on an automatic setting, which is where you would fly it most of the time. As you can see, this is a very original restoration. The Mozzalas built it for the Friedkins. It was done about 11 years ago, and then it was test flown and put on display. It was not flown. It was sitting in the museum for many, many years. And then John Baugh out of Tennessee, Nashville, Tennessee, purchased the aircraft here about a year and a half ago. And Ezel Aviation down in Breckenridge did a great job for the last 14 months getting the thing up to speed, and we ended up doing the test flying, and just a few weeks ago we took it to Sun and Fun. It was his first public appearance, and it got Reserve Grand Champion. And we also did Buford Air Show last weekend, and that's why she's here now on her way home. We're going to do a little routine maintenance on it, so you'll see the cowlings off, and we'll show you some of the intricacies of the aircraft. So the heart of this aircraft is the Wright 1820-56. It's a single-row 9-cylinder supercharged engine with a 2-speed supercharger. This is a little bit simpler than the earlier 1830 with the two superchargers and the different speeds it had and the massive intercooler. The Wildcat was far superior to high altitude over the zero because of the supercharger systems. Here you can see that the exhaust collectors on the FM-2 is just a couple of cylinders, and there's four collectors. It's a rather loud aircraft to fly because of this, and it also makes a complete mess on the side of the aircraft, but that's the price of entry to fly one of these things. Got the old cooler, a rather cavernous engine compartment because the intercooler is no longer there, so it makes for pretty easy maintenance.
Now, some of these had water injection, and can you tell us about the water injection?
Yeah, so the original 1830 powered aircraft were limited to about 1,200 horsepower or so. Later in the war, when Eastern took over the production and they changed the engine to the 1820, it was equipped with water injection, which is a water-methanol combination, enabled the aircraft to increase the manifold pressure by about 5 or 6 inches or so. Normal takeoff power is 46 inches, and with water it'd be over 50. And it was able to maintain water injection for 5 minutes continuously, which is a pretty significant amount. So the aircraft had significantly more power, better climb rate, overall better performance. The reason this came about is because the 100-130 leaded gasoline came about. Earlier on, that was not available when they built the original F4F, or at least they didn't know it was going to be there, so they had planned a little bit differently. So a little bit of the development there. Also, the beauty of this simpler system, it's lighter. So in addition to being 150 horsepower more, it was about 400 pounds less.
So in the fuel that's available today, like 100 LL, how does this perform compared to the fuels that you may have had 120, 130 octane years ago?
We run the same power settings at 46 inches. We no longer run water injection, so we don't get that extra little power, but it's really not necessary. The aircraft performs very, very well, especially since it's not equipped with the 450 caliber running machine guns that originally was on the airplane. Which brings up another interesting point. The F4F-4, they equipped that with 6 50 calibers, and the pilots didn't like it. So they realized they lost about a third of their ammo capacity, And the saying was that if you can't hit an aircraft with 4 guns, you're not going to hit it with 8 guns. So what was the point? So they went back to the original, which was 4 machine guns, 2 on each side. Another interesting aspect of the setup of the Wildcat is you can select if you want to shoot all 4, or just the 2 right or the 2 left, which is kind of an unusual setup. But those selectors are still in the cockpit. The original F4F-3 was a solid wing or fixed wing aircraft. It did not have the capability of folding. The F4F-4 and of course the FM-1 and 2 had folding wings such as this. And it's a really clever design, as you can see. It's not hydraulic. This is a manual wing. It takes 2 people, which is a little inconvenient if you're flying by yourself. So we have the main hinge right here, and we have the controls that will hook up once it folds, and it actually has even a little control lock, so when it's stowed, the ailerons won't be flopping around. It's pretty clever. This would be the gun charging cables, which are not installed yet on this aircraft, and then of course various plumbing. The mechanism that latches it is at the leading edge. It's this pin right here, and the way it works, we have this little door, and the handle comes through. You lock it in place there. And then we turn it, and as you can see, the pin will open and the flag will present. So there's no way to have an unlocked wing on this aircraft. So it will fold by itself on the ground just from gravity, and this is your indicator from the cockpit that it's correct. So to unfold the wing, we have to unhook the cable that supports it. So it takes a bit of force, and then we just walk it out. This is kind of its natural position where it likes to be, and then you simply push it up all the way and get somebody to lock the bolt in place. And as you can see, we have my high-end pitot tube cover I made from one of my socks and the best coffee in the world, the Aerobrew coffee, removed before flight.
Well, Tom, that's a great segue. Let's recognize Aerobrew Coffee, aerobrewcoffee.com. If you're an aviator and pilot, just a fan of aviation, or a lover of quality coffee, check out aerobrewcoffee.com and use our discount code, Classic Performance, to save 15% on your entire order of coffee, merchandise and gear, and coffee equipment. aerobrewcoffee.com, discount code, Classic Performance, to save 15%.
When the wings are folded, they're held in place by means of this cable that you manually install, and that supports the weight of the wing. The tail wheel is not retractable, and it's a solid rubber tail wheel, which works fine on carrier operations. It's not the greatest on soft fields because it's so tiny. It's got a pretty good footprint, so you don't want. And here's Groot. The aircraft is also equipped with a tail hook. It's a manual slide from on the left side of the cockpit. You can extend it, but you can't retract it. It has to be manually inserted. So once you have it out, there's no putting it back up in flight. So that's why you'll never see them fly around with a hook down at an air show. So the hook has a slide. There's a track in here, and it's got a crank, obviously. So what happens when it extends far enough, it simply just drops in place by itself. It hangs down slightly below the tail wheel. But because of this, there's no way to retract it in flight because it's simply too heavy. So you have to get on the ground. The tail cone is rather cavernous and holds several different items, which are pretty interesting. We have the baggage duffel bags. We've got 2 of them back here. And up at the top, you'll see that there is a vacuum tank, and that's what powers the flaps. It's a vacuum set of flaps, which is has an advantage in that they will automatically blow up if you exceed the speed of the flap. So there's no way you can damage the flaps in any configuration. You can leave the handle down all the time, and they technically would be automatic. That's not how they're supposed to be used, but it's a nice safety. The flaps on this aircraft are split flaps, so they produce a fair amount of drag, not much in the way of lift. It's a pretty high lift wing anyway, it really doesn't need it, but it's got these little flags that pop up when the flaps are extended, and they sit, of course, on the outer wing panel on both sides. An interesting aspect of this airplane that people are not very familiar with is the amazing dive speed this aircraft had, and the ability to actually maneuver at high speed. So the aircraft itself has no V&E. It does not have an upper limit of airspeed because you can't get there. The terminal velocity of the aircraft is less than the structural limitations. So you can dive this airplane, and the number I've heard is 527 miles an hour. That's a ridiculously high number, but apparently you can't hurt it. It says something about the Grumman ironworks of their design. But one thing here is you see you have these very short span ailerons, and this is part of the benefit of the design that they came up with. You can actually roll the aircraft at high speed. The Zero had a very long, thin ailerons, and it had a really hard time. Over 350, the ailerons basically froze. This did not. So this had a distinct advantage at high speed. It would also, of course, outdive a Zero by almost 100 miles an hour. So the landing gear is a rather clever design of Grumman's, and a lot of Grumman aircraft have these. All their flying boats, for example, the Widgeon, the Goose, the PBY Catalina had this one consolidated. The F3F, which was the predecessor to this aircraft, which was a biplane looking Wildcat, if you will. And of course, the Wildcat itself. So this is a manual landing gear. It's brought up by means of hand crank, 27, 28 turns, and it gets quite heavy. And the book is very specific about that. When you get to the end, it gets really heavy. And don't think that you have the gear up all the way. You got to make sure it comes all the way, because obviously it's got a lot of weight on it once it gets high. It's got a ratchet mechanism, so it's not likely to spin out of control unless you forget to select it. The reason the landing gear is built this way is because the wing is a mid-span design, which aerodynamically makes a lot of sense. The problem is, where do you put the landing gear? So this is a design problem that aircraft designers have been struggling with, and you can see various solutions, such as the crank wing Corsair, for example, or the double jointed Bearcat gear later on. So this was just their solution early on. It's a pretty good design, other than it's very narrow, so you got to be a little bit careful with that, and especially in crosswinds. It's also quite soft. It's easy to get the wing up, and it kind of stays there, and you go down the runway with one wing down, which is a little strange, but I wouldn't call it a difficult airplane to land at all. It's just a little different. You got to get used to it. It doesn't land very long. As a matter of fact, it probably uses the same amount of runways as T6 or S&J. The most successful Wildcat squadron in World War II was VC-27. One of their pilots was Ralph Elliott, and that's what this paint job is supposed to replicate. Baldy was his dog, and he happened to accrue 9.5 kills in World War II, which was extremely impressive, of course. The Wildcat was by far the most successful airplane that we had early in the war, and it continued being successful throughout the war because it did something that no other aircraft could do, and that was land and take off on escort carriers. So the Wildcat was actually in production till the very end of the war. Hard to believe. Even though the Hellcat and the Corsair showed up, they only flew on the Essex class carriers, and this aircraft flew on the shorter decked aircraft carriers. The Bearcat was supposed to replace this aircraft at the end of the war, but that actually didn't work either because the Bearcat didn't have the legs that the Wildcat did. So it still has served a great purpose all the way through the end of the war. So as you can see, this is one of the most original cockpits you'll find on any fighter today. They did a tremendous job restoring this aircraft. It's got all the original equipment, all the gun charging handles on the bottom, for example. Here's the supercharger selector. We got the fuel selector, the flaps, which is only 2 positions, up or down. We got 3-axis trim, the throttle quadrant, of course, the tailwheel lock. It's in the unlocked position right now. This would be locked, and that would be unlocked. We got the recognition lights. This is the propeller panel. This is the propeller governor control, which is automatic, and then you have the switch where you can select lesser or higher RPM off and on. So you can make it a fixed pitch propeller at any time you so desire. Alternate air, the standard flight instruments, of course. Over on the right side, we have the cowl flap, which is a manual crank. the electrical panel. And here's the famous hand crank for bringing the gear up and down with its ratcheting selector right behind it. So the 1820-56 that we have on this aircraft, really easy engine to start. You turn on the boost pump, hit the starter, and after a couple of blades, once you get good forward momentum, you start tickling the primer, turn the mags on, and it'll fire up right away. It should have zero hesitation on startup. It's a lovely, lovely engine to crank up.
So that'll do it for our tour of the Wildcat here at the American Dream SkyRanch. Certainly want to thank our good friend Thom Richard and Aero Brew Coffee for having us today. So take care, have yourself a great day. If you haven't subscribed to the channel or watched our other videos from the American Dream SkyRanch with the P40 and the T6 Texans that was undergoing annual inspection, take a look at those. We'll put a link in the description and a link in the video for them. So once again, thanks to Thom Richard, American Dream SkyRanch, and Aero Brew Coffee. We'll see you next time.